This is Mastering Your Wealth with David Gagnon, the podcast.
David, what is the one thing that many Americans fear more than death? What do you think it is?
Taxes, typically.
Taxes, that's a good guess. I've had people tell me public speaking, that's up there.
Yeah, public speaking, but outliving their money.
That's a good one.
Probably the biggest fear.
Yeah, that's the number one fear of retirement is running out of money. And believe it or not, the thing that Americans fear more than death is actually retirement. There was a recent survey that found 61% of working Americans are more afraid of retiring than dying. And I have to know, and again, with nearly 40 years of experience here, there's got to be more factors weighing in on this fear. Is it the fact of not having a routine? Is it the fact that the paycheck stops? I mean, what are you doing to address these kind of concerns?
When you have that type of fear, it's because you don't feel you have control or enough information or enough knowledge to feel comfortable knowing that. So, for instance, if you're retiring, you really need to have a lot of things come into play so that your money will last as long as you do, adjusted for inflation and taxes. And a lot of people worked hard all their lives. They've saved what they could. They hope they're going to have enough saved when they get to retirement. They haven't made costly mistakes, and they don't lose a chunk of their money, especially in retirement. And they are looking to spend, at a lifestyle spending that would make them happy in retirement and do the things that they had on their bucket list, besides just making the usual payments for the traditional things for food and utilities and all that. But a lot of people go into retirement blind without a plan. And I always say that if you have a plan, and I refer to it as your financial GPS, that's really tailored to what you want to see happen financially into the future, and do the things that you can afford to do in the future. And, and like I said, trying to make this all work and stretch out money over 15 to 35 years in what could be your lifetime in retirement, there's a lot of things you got to get right so the retirement does not fall off the rails. And we can accomplish this by planning. And we always use the analogy is you would never build a brand new house from the ground up without a set of drawings. And if you did try to do that, you're going to waste a lot of money, and you're going to get a home that will not come close to what you anticipated getting, right?
Sure,
or having.
yeah.
Same thing with money. Money, you really have to plan for it. And there's a lot of moving parts to it. You got to make good decisions in all kinds of areas. And the big areas would be, how do you finance and pay off your home that works to your advantage? How do you fund your retirement? How do you invest appropriately so that you're not taking excess risk and you're getting steady returns and you're getting the yields that you need to meet your goals when you get to retirement and past that? How do you pay your taxes? How do you find a tax strategy to become very tax efficient, not just in your working years, but more so in your retirement years?
Yeah.
What about a backup healthcare plan? Because that's derailing more and more retirements. And as the baby boomer generation gets older and older, we're seeing more people fall off the rails of retirement because they have to pay for out-of-pocket healthcare because they had a stroke, they need help at home, or they end up in a nursing home. And so these are all things that if we can put together a plan of what people are currently doing and look into the future with how that might look, then we can identify the problems that might lie ahead and have time today to actually put together a personalized strategic plan to give you better results by taking better control over what you can do with your money. And there's a lot of things that we want to do very effectively. We want to lower your risk, and not just market risk. We want to lower interest rate risk and tax risk, longevity risk, healthcare risk. There's all kinds of risks that can hurt you. And these are things that we see and can really validate in our analysis to determine if it's a potential reality, or what can we do to mitigate those potential risks with a good plan and make sure people are making the right decisions with their money, how they invest, how they position their money for tax efficiency, and build a plan that is going to be a lifetime income plan that they can rely on, because we use the right tools and techniques and products so that they can have reassurance that they'll never run out of money, and that'll help them live a very comfortable life in retirement.
Well, and I think you're right about that, having that comfortable life in retirement and really getting rid of that anxiety and that noise of, do I have enough money? Have I done enough? And having that guaranteed income is obviously going to give you some of that added sleep insurance and give you some of that reassurance and confidence within your retirement. And, David, for those listening going, oh my gosh, this is what's been keeping me up at night. Have I done enough? Do I even have a financial plan? Because a lot of folks say, what do you mean? I've been saving. I have a 401k and I have, my inheritance from grandma. So I should be fine. That's not a plan, folks. That is essentially a vehicle, a savings vehicle. And having a written plan is essential. So what's the first step in sitting down with you to getting this plan started and also discussing these different opportunities, as you mentioned, guaranteed income?
First of all, I like to have a conversation with folks to see what they're worried about, what their concerns are, what they've been doing in the past that they've liked, what they haven't liked. And then what we would do is our paraplanner, Frank, would send them an email. So that would give them a link into our portal that they can provide us their information. And we go through quite a bit of detail. And this is a great exercise for people to go through because everybody we've talked to, nobody's done this amount of review and analysis on their financial plan or lack thereof that they're currently running with. Once we get all their details, we can have that high-level review of what things might look like looking into the future. And we can stress test it for certain things that you might have on your bucket list. Like maybe do you want to take a vacation every year or buy a car every 5 years or do things with the grandkids? Everything comes with a price tag, and we can put that into the analysis and see, is it doable based on what you're currently doing? And then when I see the details of that analysis, we'll see what problems might lie ahead. Maybe you run out of money. Maybe you're paying too much in taxes. Maybe you don't have a backup plan for lost income when a spouse dies, because when you're married and a spouse dies, what is your plan to replace the lost Social Security that will occur when one of the two of you passes away? Because you lose the lower of the two. What other adjustments happen? I mean, we have people with pensions that if the person that has the pension dies and they elected the life only, well, the survivor gets nothing. There's all kinds of backup strategies that we have to evaluate in the what-if scenarios that will occur. We just don't know when, but we want to be ready for it. So when we do that initial analysis, now we can see what things look like going into the future. Now we're in a better position to identify what is working, what isn't, and what are the things in their blind spot that can make improvements, and in a lot of cases, substantial improvements. So we're going to meet with a couple next week, and we did the initial plan. And I also did a portfolio analysis of their investment plan, and they've been with an investment person for quite a long time in a bucket of mutual funds. And when we go through their analysis, they're going to see that the long-range outlook of how they invested versus how they can do it proactively and using different tools and techniques, had they done what we typically do going back the last 15, 20 years, because we use tools that a lot of people don't really know about because we're using institutional type of money management, which the wealthy people have access to. So even though you don't have to be wealthy at the level that the typical wealthy person has to be to get access to this professional type of money management, we have these resources and we can do things differently to get a better outcome for people, especially in retirement for income planning, because we utilize an income distribution plan strategy with different tools which provide steady income and nice yields and returns than what most people see in a traditional mutual fund plan or even a stock portfolio. So it's good to go through an exercise with us, and since it's complimentary, I mean, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain by spending a little bit of time with us. And I've been doing this a long time, and when people see the value that we can create, then they see there's a reason to have a relationship and a long-term relationship, because once we get your strategic, personalized plan put together, it's easy to make your decisions on how you should be investing your money and where and what tools and strategies to use. Because when you see the details of your analysis and how we can create more value, a lot of people will just become clients, they onboard, and now we have a plan that they can follow and they understand. And that really reduces a lot of financial anxiety when you get to that level.
At age 63, Eddie Murphy, he's still at it. His streaming movie of Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is now on Netflix. Murphy made his breakthrough as a raunchy stand-up comic in the late 1970s. I'm sure everybody remember the red leather outfits. You remember those outfits he used to wear, David?
Yeah. He was funny.
He looked good, I tell you that. Well, he tells Jimmy Fallon recently that he ran into the legendary, the godfather of soul, James Brown, and of course, James gave him some advice.
Backstage, they turned around and said, Eddie Murphy, he said, when you gonna start working clean? I said, what? He said, you gotta stop doing all that cursing, and you gotta make sure you get your money, any money you got, and bury it in the woods. And I was like, what? Buried in the woods? I said, because the government gonna take your money if you have it in the bank. The government will take your money. You bury that money in the woods. Oh my God. And I said, but can't the government take your land? And he said, well, they won't know where the money is.
I mean, he does such a great job of telling that story. We come from generations where our grandparents or our great-grandparents, listen, they were putting money in the yard, under the mattress. My grandmother used to hide money and jewelry in the bricks of their home. And if you asked her why, it all led back to the Depression. And yes, people come in to take your money. But, nowadays, when it comes to burying, money in the woods, it's also known as dead money because it's not growing or doing anything.
It's funny. I hear stories all the time about clients that have inherited money from grandparents, for instance, and now they're going into the grandparents' home to clean it out, to get it ready to sell, and they've come across money in the walls of the attic and under the insulation, and it's crazy. Some of these homes, have a lot of cash stashed, and all it takes is one fire in that home to see it all go away. And the sad thing is, there's probably a lot of that out there, yet if something were to happen to that home and the owner of that home and those that might have been in line to inherit that money, they might not even know it's gone or they ever had it in the home because nobody's disclosed it.
Yeah.
A lot of times this is uncovered just by chance. But the thing is, when you're looking at what's referred to as dead money, meaning that it's not really being optimized to the best of its ability that could help you in a better way. A lot of people think about market risk, right? They're afraid to invest in the market because they don't want to lose money. Now, when people go into something that's not earning anything from a market type return, say it's in a CD or in your mattress, right? It's never going to have a rate of return. Well, now you have a different type of risk. Inflation is killing it, especially in this time. So if your money is not at least earning what inflation is, it's going backwards. You're losing loss of purchasing power. What if you're doing things from a tax perspective, meaning that you might be not taking advantage of tax strategies to invest wisely, not just only get good returns, but how to mitigate taxes on that return. We're always looking for ways to optimize your investments, and the ultimate goal is to lower your risk, and not just market risk, but interest rate risk, which could affect bonds, inflation risk, tax risk, paying taxes unnecessarily because you don't have a tax strategy to minimize that tax. And so there's a lot of different types of risk that you want to kind of bake into your planning. And, a lot of times we see a lot of people are not aligning their investments with the objectives of what their money needs to create for them. And so what we'll see, a lot of people get close to retirement. They've invested in their 401k, their IRAs, and they're probably in a good portion of equities or part of the stock market. And when they get into retirement, when you think about it, you go from a different phase. You go from, in your working years, being in an accumulation phase, and you're going to invest differently when you're in that phase. But when you get into retirement, your objective is entirely different, especially if you're going to need to derive an income from that nest egg. And a lot of people have to, because Social Security is just not going to pay all their bills. And if you don't have a pension, well, it's more likely they're going to have to really draw an income from that nest egg. So what we see is we see people investing the same way, going from the working years into the retirement income distribution years, and their investments are out of line with what they're trying to create from that money, which is income. And here's where a big problem lies. If you're invested in a market-sensitive portfolio and you're in retirement and you're taking distributions from that account, and some months it might be going up in value, but other months when it goes down and you have to sell your shares to create that cash, many more shares because the value dropped, that's a very vulnerable position to be in, because we refer to that in the industry as a sequence of returns risk, meaning that if you go into retirement and early on you suffer losses from a portfolio you're trying to take an income stream from, that could deplete that investment nest egg or that retirement nest egg very quickly over a period of time if that continues to happen. And it's tough to recover from that. And so when people are looking at their assets, we take it from a different standpoint. We look at what do they want to accomplish with their finances going forward, and what are their spending goals. And we need to take into account variables such as inflation and taxes, and maybe things that might surprise them, like out-of-pocket health care. But once we kind of get together a budget of what they plan to do and kind of put into the equation their bucket list, because everything comes with a price tag. And so if they want to take vacations and plan that out every year, or buy cars or whatever it might be, let's see what their wants are and put a dollar and price tag on that. And then we can back up and see, all right, well, with what you're presently doing today, you're not saving enough, or you're not getting enough return, or you're going to pay too much taxes in the future.
For more details or to sit down with David for your complimentary financial GPS, visit masteringyourwealthradio.com. David Gagnon is an investment advisor representative of Retirement Wealth Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. First Financial Planners, Retirement Wealth Advisors, and WICC are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the fields of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Past performance is not a guarantee of future result. Investments will fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested.